Hello, welcome to my channel. I am a sketch artist and I'm here to show you how easy it is to draw. If you don't believe me, keep on watching. And if you like what you see, please make sure you like and subscribe because it helps me out a ton. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hello there, you fine people. This is the final video for my Wonder Woman sketch. In this session we're going to be finishing off the image completely. We're going to be doing all the metal work for her armor, and we're going to be doing some more final touches, and right at the end I'm going to announce the winner. So without further ado, let's crack on. Now we're going to jump straight in with the metal work here. So I'm starting off now with drawing the basics of the interior side. I've made a bit of a mess up here, so I'm going to sort of start that again. Now drawing metal is it's easy. It's easier technically than drawing skin and hair and all that kind of thing. It's not as organic as skin and hair, but it is certainly technically easier. So I'm starting off with just sketching out the basic layout of her circlet, if that's what you want to call it. If you guys know of the proper name for it, please do let me know in the comments area below. Now looking at this right side, for some reason it seems to kind of, this interior line seems to kind of cut off halfway, or there's a shadow, but I'm going to put it in there anyway. Let's see now. Drawing this line. So I am literally just going through and getting the basics shapes in there. Logically I should be doing this sort of star thing first, but I don't normally do it that way. I'm gonna just get everything else in first. And the next piece. Now with drawing, you've got to be unafraid. It's very sort of daunting to sit there and go, oh God, you know, where do I begin, where do I start? But if you think like that, you won't really get off the ground. And you're going to make mistakes. but you won't learn unless you do. It's one of those funny things where you've got to just go with it, and you've got to believe in yourself. Now, it's not perfectly spot on, but at the moment I'm just sketching it in, see? Making sure all the area, all the little sort of pointy things on the star are in the right area, level with, or symmetrical, I should say. So that's fine. So next I'm just going to go around and redefine this border, because it's been lost somewhat. Goes into shadow there, so we won't really bother. We'll do it a little bit. Going to this side now. So, as I said a few videos ago, earlier in this series, this was meant to be a live sketch. But things didn't quite work out that way. I'm still working out the technical issues. So as soon as I've sorted that out, I can bring some live sketching to you. And also, as I said in the previous video, when this is complete, I'll be doing a edited down version of this series, down to about sort of 20 minutes, I'm not sure yet. It'll be sort of like a time-lapse thing, highlights, etc. So you can see in one short video, beginning to end. So look out for that. So, if we take a look at the circlet now, we can see quite clearly where the shadows and the highlights are. So we need to make a sort of note of the, see that it goes from shadow into a bit of light. We've got a big bright highlight here, and then it gets quite dark, and so on this side. So where do we go from here? How do we start? Well, we start it just like we would any other section. We do the basic shading. We do that first. Now, what you can do is give yourself a guide. So you can go through like this. You can say, well, the highlights kind of begin here, they dip down a little bit here, they come back up a little bit, and then we've got this kind of whole area where we've got a big sort of highlight. You can give yourself a slight sort of guide. I don't know whether you can see that on the video, but you can give yourself a guide, and then go in and just start sketching in, shading in the lightest color. So we're going to go through quickly and start blocking out the lighter shade areas. So knowing full well that this particular panel here is slightly darker, I'm going to apply a little bit more pressure to it. Now the star is another thing, so I'm just going to block in the points which are practically one color shade. Okay, down here now. Just going to go over lightly with our finger. We don't want to spoil the border lines that we've just drawn in. So we're going to try and avoid that. So already that's starting to sit very well. So let's go in and apply the next layer. Now, because we know that the metal work sort of kind of goes this way for the most part, as we can see from these lines, we're going to try and emulate that a little bit. So always checking back to the original photo, the source photo. And you're trying to emulate what you see. So at this stage we are literally just getting the basic shade done, the basic shade in there. We're going to worry about all the darker pieces in a minute. Okay. So now we're just going to go and start doing the dark bits. Getting the border lines just right. Try and make it as accurate as you can. So now that you've established where the star is, you can go in and define a little bit more, like I am now. So, continuing on with the edges. Okay. Now what we can do is take our smudge stick and start sort of blending things in a bit now. Okay. Now the final bit is getting all the deep shadows. So it requires a little bit of concentration, requires a little bit of patience. Try and replicate everything that you see. Some borderlines might have to be redrawn. Don't worry, just redraw them, it's fine. And continuing on with the shadow work. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And so I'm happy with that. So before I move on down to the bottom area here, I'm just going to quickly finish off the ear, because I have left that and I kind of want to get it done and out of the way. So ears are pretty much the easiest part of the face. All you've got to do is, like everything else, just get the basic shapes right. And we can start shading in things. Okay. Now, let's do her arm piece here. So I am, as I said, being quicker than I normally would. This is for your benefit, so you can see how I do things. I take my time, I don't really rush, I try to get all the sizes and dimensions right as I'm going along. If a specific line isn't right, I'll always try to correct it. Okay. making sure I get the lines right here. Okay, so that's the basics, right? So now, looking at the shading, it's a little bit more simpler. Taking a look at and studying where the bright parts and the dark parts are. So this is pretty much dark. And this area is dark as well. But what I'm going to do for this section is I'm going to do the shading this way, and I'm going to be a bit rough here. I'm going to leave quite a few gaps. Now the reason is because there are certain areas which have white lines, and this is probably the best way to replicate those lines. So we're just going through like this, and then we're going to just touch up the edges with some shade. There's a dark band here, so let's get that in. Okay. Try and smooth it out just a little bit here. So with these bits here, we know that there are sort of darkish lines. So we're just going to sort of bring them in a little bit. So I could take more time with this, but there's quite a lot to do. So we're just being as brief as we can. Brief and effective. Okay. Let's redefine these pieces here. All right. Let's look at the outside now. Okay, so that is pretty much okay. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to shade in some of the shadows on her skin. Sort of finalize all the shading that we did in the last part here. Okay. Now looking at it now, I'm not sure if I want to go all the way down. I never really do. I always sort of have it fading off a little bit, so I think that's what I'm going to do here. It just lends to the whole atmosphere of the piece. It doesn't have to be full on complete. Okay. Now, sort of start defining that side of her chest armor. Finish off the shading here. So whilst I'm doing this bit, I'll tell you a little bit about how I started drawing. Apparently, I could always draw. My parents told me that I was always quite a good drawer. I never really believed them. I was always a bit skeptical. I always felt that, well, if I can do it, I don't see why other people can't. It turned out that I could actually draw, and I never really realized it until quite late. And looking back now, it shocks me to think that I never thought about doing art at college. I did a few years of extra education and performing arts. I did at one college for about 3 years, and then I went on to a different college and I did media production management. And during the media production management, I studied the history of art fairly briefly, and it was very interesting. I didn't really retain much, I'll admit, but I did find it quite interesting. We had quite a few discussions on the validity of certain types of art. I was never really a fan of surrealism or abstractism. So artists like Jackson Pollock, Andy Warhol, etc., etc. I never really sort of liked it. I always felt it was a bit sort of easy. Now, you will probably most likely have a different opinion. That's, you know, that's fine. I'm not suggesting that you should adopt mine at all. I am personally a fan of realism. So, you know, the greats, Michelangelo, Leonardo, I've always found them to be a lot more interesting. So things like Pre-Raphaelites, I've always loved. I guess it's because my grandmother always was fond of it, and my grandfather. So that's most likely where I got my desire from. So I've always been a fan of realism, things that look real. And for me, art is best when it's realistic. I mean, and that's just my opinion. So I think subconsciously I've made it a a point of making things as real as possible with my art. So, having been heavily influenced by people like that. But I've always had kind of a soft spot for people like Dali, the melting clocks I've always liked. So I do understand people's love for surrealist art and stuff. So, but for me, I've always preferred realistic art. So I didn't really sort of discover my ability to draw until quite late, as I've said. Now I'm 39 at the recording of this video, and I discovered it when I was about 34 or 35. I wouldn't say I was a comic book fan, not like a sort of a major fan. I've always liked comic books, and I've always appreciated it for what they are. And one day during the summer, I was kind of out of things to read, and I was in town, and I was walking past a comic book shop. So I decided that I would go in and have a look, and I found a comic called Kingdom Come. And there was an artist called Alex Ross. Well, there were two, Alex Ross and Mark Waid. that comic book pretty much changed everything. Literally everything. There was a specific image that I came across, which will be up on the screen right now. And when I saw that image, I just fell in love with it, and something compelled me to draw it. So I just sat down and I started to sketch it. Now, me being me, I didn't want to copy it, exactly. So I ended up sort of changing it up, and this was the result. It's different, but it's similar. And when I had finished that, I knew that I had something. I knew that I had something, and I started to believe everything that was being told to me for all these long years. So I moved on, and I found a poster of an actress called Jennifer Lawrence, and she was the star of a film called Hunger Games, and I found a particular poster that I really liked, and I thought I would sketch it, this particular picture here. And so I got going, and it took me like about a couple of days or so, and this was the result. From there, I think I definitely knew that I had something, and I knew that maybe this is something that I should be pursuing. So that's what I did. I started pursuing it. And 4 or 5 years later, here we are. And it's funny, the fact that I was always told that I could draw, but I never sort of paid attention or listened to any of it until I decided to have a look for myself, until I felt I was naturally ready. So I've sketched the outline of her armor, and now I'm going in and sort of shading the basics as I normally do, blocking out all the shade. So as I said, I won't be going all the way to the bottom. When you're shading in a large area, it's quite difficult to keep the shade and it's difficult to keep it even, and just remember the rhythm and the slow movement of your hand as you go across the paper. Keep in mind border lines, etc., etc. Now I normally go from the border line in, but in this case I'm just going to throw caution to the winds here. And do it this way. is this side. So let's get that in. Okay, now we need to smudge it, smoothen it all out as best we can with our finger. We don't want it to look like it's been shaded in at all by a pencil. Get it as smooth as you possibly can. That's okay, that's good. Now don't worry about the shade bleeding over into different areas. Don't worry about that at this stage. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to work on the brighter metal. So starting from the right side here, we can see that it's very dark. And then it gets brighter, like that, fairly quickly. And then we get up here. And blocking out this particular shade. Moving on, we can see this panel is pretty much dark all the way over. There's some bright bits, but we'll deal with that in a minute. This panel is darker one side and gets brighter, that's fine. And that kind of repeats as we go down. And then looking over to this side, that's kind of dark. This is side of the panel here is pretty much dark, so we're just gonna go in on all that. That's slightly brighter, not as dark as that panel. And then for the rest of it, it's kind of like a rounded off shade, so we're just gonna bring that in. And this panel here gets dark at this side and then comes out. That's fine as well. The centerpiece. We'll just do a sort of a light shade and we'll deal with the rest in a moment. So there's another piece there that I missed before, that's okay, get that. So we've got the basics sketched in here pretty much. I am happy with that. Never forget, always go through, when you're done with shading, always go through, give it a light going over with your finger. You want to block out any of the gaps that you made whilst you were shading. Okay, so it's coming along already, as we can see. Very nice. So now we're going to go in like we did with this piece and this piece. We're just going to go in and with our smudge stick, use our big one this time, we're going to go in and start sort of adding in some bits of detail to the metal work. So rather than me using a pencil to do this like I did up here and here, this is quite a large area, so I'm gonna do it this way. Okay. And that's the thing about being creative. You find different techniques of getting certain things done. Okay. We're going to be very brief here. We don't want to do too much with this because it's a rather risky move doing this. We don't want it to come out wrong. Okay, that'll do. Alright, so like before, we're going to go in now and start doing all the edges. Redraw them. Okay, coming out quite nice. Making sure that we get every line in. And try not to break any of the lines up. Try and keep them flowing, or it will not look right. So doing the outer line here. Okay. Okay, good. And last but not least, we're just going to sketch in these lines again. Now we're going to do the shading on her skin. Okay, so we're going to call it a day on that pretty much. One final thing that we're going to do is we're going to use our rubber and we're going to bring out some of these highlights on here. So just to bring out that shine. Okay, that'll do, that's fine. So let's take another look at the image. It's not bad. I think what I'm going to do here is do the border liner here. Sort of bring it out a little bit more. All right. So now there's only really one thing to do left, and that is the hair pieces at the bottom, the bits that we left out. And so we're going to start here. So when we're talking about hair now, we're going with that flow, the flow of hair. Making sure to not leave any breakages in our lines as best as we can. I know it's not always possible, and some things happen. Okay. We're just going through now and just putting in all the pieces that we missed last time. You don't worry about getting it spot on with the source image. You are just sort of getting the general feel of it. But there is quite a bit of room when it comes to hair to being creative and adding in your own sort of particular flair. Okay. So we're just gonna do a little bit of final shading work with our smudge stick. Okay. Right, very nice. I'm happy. That's pretty much everything that I wanted to do. I'm just going through with the pencil now, just give the final sort of touches. Okay. So Just making sure that I'm happy with everything. I think so. Okay, there we have it. Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot. So, I've selected a winner, and it is a subscriber called Ari Aronson. So congratulations, Ari Aronson. If you want to send me a message, I will try to get hold of you. But if you want to contact me via my email address, or put a comment down in the description of this video, we can work out a way of me getting this sketch to you. So congratulations, my friend. This is yours. Let me just finish off by putting my signature. There we go. There we are. Thank you very much for watching this series. As I said, I will be editing a cut down version for you guys, so you can watch a much shorter time-lapse version of beginning to end. That'll be out very soon. And please like and subscribe to my channel. Click the bell notification. That would be very helpful for me. Look out for my next series. Still deciding on what that should be, so if you find people have any ideas, please write that in the comments section below as well, and I will consider it. If you want to give me a challenge, please do. I will see you for the next show. Thank you very much.